Nightcast. Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth brings you the current news from the world today and how it relates to Bible prophecy. Understanding the end-time events leading to the peaceful world tomorrow. Ladies and gentlemen, Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth.
Greetings, friends, and welcome to this January 13th, 2013 edition of Nightcast. Opening story tonight, tributes have been paid to the former Israeli Prime Minister Ariel Sharon at a state memorial service attended by dignitaries from Israel and around the world.
With prayers and tributes outside its parliament, Israel and its friends said a final farewell to Ariel Sharon, 8 years to the month after a stroke removed him from power. Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister, said Sharon would go down in history as one of Israel's greatest military leaders, who restored a lost legacy of Jewish bravery. To Ariel Sharon's sons and grandchildren, Joe Biden, the U.S. Vice President, said Sharon's passing also felt like a death in the family to many Americans, even though at times he'd had profound differences with American leaders.
From my observation, he was a complex man, but to understand him better, I think it's important. History will judge. He also lived in complex times, in a very complex neighborhood.
The coffin was taken away to be buried at the Sharon family farm in southern Israel. Ariel Sharon is as controversial in death as he was in life. For many Israelis, it was his military qualities, his strength, and his capacity for ruthlessness, which made him a desirable prime minister at the time that he was elected. Ariel Sharon owned a house in the old city of Jerusalem, where most residents are Palestinians. For many years, he led the drive to settle Jews in the occupied territories. Jewish settlers who live here in the Muslim Quarter have armed security guards. Mustafa Barghouti, a prominent Palestinian who believes in non-violent resistance to Israel, said Israelis should move on from Sharon's legacy.
He thought he can deal with Palestinians and Arabs and the rest of the world only through force. What Israel needs is a different kind of political generation. People who understand that they themselves will not be free as Israelis from the system of apartheid and occupation unless we, the Palestinians, are free.
As a soldier, Ariel Sharon ignored orders if he thought his plan was more effective. Often it was. Many Palestinians and some human rights campaigners think he should have been put on trial as a war criminal. But he goes to his grave mourned by Israelis who felt safer when he was around. Jeremy Bowen, BBC News, Jerusalem.
And thank you. Jeremy Bowen is the Middle East correspondent and director for the BBC News, and he does an outstanding job covering the Middle East. Mr. Bowen, there's just one thing in that report, though, I would say to you, covering how the Palestinian the PLO feels about Israel. When you ask anybody's enemy how they feel, and the enemy is saying, you should change how you do things, there, roll over and play dead for us. We who have the common goal among us to do away with Israel first chance we get. That's our ultimate goal, If we fail now, we just keep trying, and if we can get you to lay down your arms and roll over and play dead, that's the cake for us, So unless you understand the history of the opposition that the Palestinians have, the Arabs have, against Israel, it goes back more than 3,000 years to the time of Abraham with his wife Sarah, and Sarah, when she was not able to bear a child, and believing that, God might do this some other way. Well, here's my handmaid Hagar. Have a child with her, Abraham. And Abraham very willingly, too willingly, goes along with that. His wife Sarah chews him out about following her suggestion later, wrings him out for following my suggestion to go have a child with my handmaid Hagar. How's that for feminine reasoning? Ladies, you do that sometimes. There's a lot of jokes about, what women say and how men interpret it and what men say and so on. He said, she said. But it goes back to the son of Hagar with Abraham, Ishmael, against the son of Sarah and Abraham, Isaac. And even the Quran manufactures, I was going to say a new truth, but it's not really a new truth, manufactures a falsehood against the truth, trying to turn the truth into a lie, that it was Isaac. The truth being that Isaac was the one God told Abraham to sacrifice. And then when God saw that Abraham was willing to do that, God said, "Hold it, Abraham. Now I know that you'll fully obey me." And he had a ram in the bush for Abraham. But the Quran manufactures a falsehood out of that and says, no, it was Isaac. It was not Isaac. They say it was Ishmael that Abraham took up on a mountain to sacrifice. And they changed the mountain. They changed the whole story around. But the real truth is in this book, the Holy Bible. I happen to be holding a King James version, and any other version that follows the text from which the King James version was translated and rendered, that's God's holy word in a translation with some errors here and there, but by and large it's God's word overall in these translations of the Holy Bible, not in the Quran, my friends. And I'm not sorry to say that. I don't care who tries to tar and feather me. But let's go on now with our next story. What's going to happen, friends, on September 23rd this year, 2014? If some of you have any clue what special things happened in the past on that date, I would appreciate it if you either email me or when you see me on Facebook with a mention of tonight's news in your comment, you can say, "Hey, Steve, I know what happened on September 23rd in your church. This and that happened." I'd be very curious to see what some of you may say in regard to that. But this year, what's going to happen on September 23rd is going to be a new release of one of the euro bills. There's been a new 10 euro note design that will be released on September 23rd. It boasts a range of new security features. I believe we've got that story ready for you next. I sure hope so, yes. And, that's why the curtains. That's why I was, this opening frame, I thought, how could this be the new Euro story? But it is. They are unveiling this at a exhibition in Frankfurt put on by the European Central Bank, the ECB. The note, which will go into circulation again on September 23rd, features raised print, a portrait, watermark, and a hologram. The ECB's Yves Mersch said the new notes would enable everyone who uses them to do so with complete confidence.
The euro is now used worldwide with around 15 billion notes in circulation, worth over 900 billion euros in all. The 5 euro and 10 euro notes are not always treated in a kind way. By protecting them better, we can prolong their service life and thereby also reduce the environmental impact of producing banknotes. One of the main reasons for introducing a new series of notes is to ensure that everyone who uses them can continue to do so with complete confidence. We have drawn on a number of new technologies to modernize the security features, making the notes even more resistant to counterfeiting.
And friends, if you stay tuned to the end, if we have time tonight, I plan to show you a video on how these notes how money is printed, how the paper is produced for the printing of this money. And for those of you that want that, you know, for instance, counterfeiting is big business. And for those of you who are in the counterfeiting, you may want to really pay attention to this news story the BBC has. I plan to show you at the end of tonight's show. It gives you a lot of detail on how the paper is manufactured for security purposes, and you should make note of that if you're going to try counterfeiting. Actually, I'm only teasing a little bit there. I mean, in one way, you know, it should be kept a big secret, but if you want to know some of this, we're going to play that video for you toward the end of tonight's program on how and where they print it. And our next story, though, we're going to Egypt, where they're having a referendum, voting in a referendum on a new constitution, which would pave the way for presidential and parliamentary elections. Before we show you the main video, I'm going to show you one that'll give you an overview in 60 seconds. This voting would replace the controversial constitution approved by the referendum in 2012, 7 months before the military ousted President Mohamed Morsi. Here now is an outline to the background to the vote in 60 seconds and a video produced by Michael Hurst. Friends, I apologize. I see that at the beginning of that video we may have had the audio a little bit on the loud side, but I hope that 60 seconds gave you a little bit helpfulness and understanding what's going on there in Egypt. This week, Egyptians will vote in a referendum on a new constitution. The previous one, brought in under the Islamist government a couple of years ago, was nullified. It's the first test at the polls for the interim government after the removal of the Muslim Brotherhood President Mohamed Morsi last July. Ora Gorin has this report from Cairo.
A slick production with a stirring beat. This army video is drumming up support for the constitution. The military is used to calling the tune here, and it wants a resounding yes vote. It is a one-sided campaign. Plenty of yes posters, no sign of any calling for a no. People have been arrested for putting them up.
No.
The veteran Egyptian diplomat Ammar Moussa chaired the committee that drafted the constitution. He says the current chaos imposed some limitations.
Well, I must say that we have done everything in this constitution to preserve democracy and to promote democracy. But there are articles and situations that need to be dealt with, bearing in mind the security of the state and the security of the people of the country.
On the streets, a hard sell about the benefits for the people. The authorities say they'll get more rights and more freedom, but they can still be tried in military courts. This woman has more immediate concerns, like survival. Shall I feed my children from the rubbish bin, she asks. Well, there's plenty of heated discussion going on here. This referendum is about more than adopting a new constitution. When Egyptians go to vote on this document, it will be the first time they've been to the polls since Mohamed Morsi was ousted last July. And for many, this vote will also be seen as a referendum on a coup. For Adaf Suwaif, the vote is all but irrelevant.
The entrance to Tahrir is a tangle of tanks, barbed wire, soldiers and people.
The acclaimed Egyptian novelist recalls the revolution of 2011 that seemed like a new beginning. But now, she says, Egypt has returned to the old handbook of oppression.
Why go into a whole process of deciding on a constitution when actually the institution of the law itself is being eroded? The only thing that this constitution does is that it legitimizes the very powerful and unquestioned position of the army in Egypt today.
Liberals aren't the only ones unhappy with the constitution. There are calls for a boycott by the Muslim Brotherhood and its supporters. It's now classed as a terrorist group. Brotherhood protests continue, and the referendum may not deliver the stability the authorities are promising. Orla Guerin, BBC News, Cairo.
Thank you, Orla. And friends, in our next story from today's news, President Francois Hollande is in the news again with the scandal over his visit to the flat of where he visited a French actress. Now, before I show you that story from today's news, I want to take you back to a story from Friday, where French President Francois Hollande says he is considering suing a magazine, the Closer magazine, C-L-O-S-E-R, Closer magazine, which claimed he was having an affair with actress Julie Gayet, 41-year-old, beautiful actress. Mr. Hollande described the report as, you'll see her in this video, by the way. I think you'll agree, fellas, ladies, you too. A beautiful actress. Mr. Hollande described the report against him as an attack on the right to privacy, but he did not deny the allegation. Gavin Hewitt has this report from Paris.
This is a story about the French president, scooter rides, and an actress. This was the president today and his entourage crossing the street near the Élysée Palace. But a French magazine alleges that President Hollande made similar short journeys to this apartment, just 200 meters from his office, but on the back of a scooter and disguised by a helmet. He was said to be meeting Julie Gayet, a film actress and one of his prominent supporters. During the election campaign, she had described him as humble and a good listener. The magazine says this was the secret love of the president. Over the revelations about this apartment, the Élysée Palace said that Francois Hollande greatly deplores the invasion of his privacy, to which he has a right along with any other French citizen. What they didn't do was to deny the story.
I think that politicians have a right to have a private life.
The president is just a human being, as everyone, and he has the right to have a private life, and including a sexual life.
The president's partner is Valerie Trierweiler, who lives at the Élysée Palace. Today, the magazine attempted to justify revealing new personal allegations.
Is the private life of a president private or public? Hollande has talked a lot about private matters. He described Valerie Trierweiler as the woman of his life. He has deliberately opened up his family and created interest in them.
These revelations come at a difficult time for Francois Hollande. He has the lowest approval rating of any modern French president. There have been recent protests against high taxes. Unemployment remains stubbornly high, and the economy hovers near recession.
It is probably not very good for President Hollande to be seen as gallivanting and frolicking in the streets of Paris when the economic situation is so dire.
Next week, the President hosts his first news conference of the new year. Many, recalling the high hopes of his inauguration, saw this as an opportunity to relaunch a troubled presidency. Now he is involved in a scandal. The French might respect privacy, but on most newspaper stands, Closer magazine was sold out. Gavin Hewitt, BBC News, Paris.
And friends, some of you may be wondering, well, Stephen, have you turned this news program into a soap opera? Well, this is public news, and not only that, this is news that involves the brother of the tribes of Israel from the United States, Manasseh, and from the UK, Ephraim, and from Asher, and all the other tribes around the world as well. We've been covering Zebulun in the Holland and the Netherlands, and we'll be covering more of who the tribes are around the world. But in France, the French people are the descendants of Brother Reuben in the Bible. And after this next video clip, I have one from today that updates this story about First Lady Valerie Trierweiler and remaining in the hospital. After this story, I'm going to show you a couple of scriptures from the Bible that show why this is relative and important to us today. Those scriptures will show you how Brother Reuben, who was the firstborn of Jacob, lost his birthright. Jacob, whose name was changed to Israel, lost his birthright over incidents of the nature that are being reported here, and the fact that the president is not denying the allegations, and many of the people you heard interviewed here in Mr. Gavin's report tell you that, or Mr. Gavin Hewlett's report, tell you that the French people, hey, you know, even the president has a right to privacy and has a right to a sexual life. In other words, you know, I have here in France, immortality is the word for the day. You know, and the new morality. Reuben kind of led the way for the new morality. I'll show you some scriptures in a moment. Let's go to this story from today that shows you how the First Lady is to remain in the hospital where she has been since this magazine article came out accusing the President Francois Hollande, of having an affair.
In this deepening personal drama, President Hollande's partner, First Lady Valerie Trierweiler, remains in hospital and may stay there for several days. She went for treatment after a French magazine indicated the president had a new girlfriend. Still, a majority of French people see this as a private matter.
I personally don't care if he is living, if he has a wife or if he has 2 or 3 wives. That's not my problem. I think
every president has a life and love affair, so no matter for me.
The president has deplored the invasion of his privacy, but has not clarified the nature of his relationship, and neither has Julie Gaillet, the actress who he visited. And much of the political class is still insisting the president has nothing to answer.
I think that private life is a private affair. It is something we have preserved in France.
But questions are mounting. The apartment which the president visited was rented by a friend of the actress with reported links to criminals. And as regards the First Lady, even the president's allies say his relationship will have to be clarified.
If something has to be announced on the life of the family of Mr. Hollande, I'm sure that there will be some information given in the next days.
Amidst all of this, President Hollande tomorrow is due to hold his first press conference of the new year. Many saw that as an opportunity to relaunch his troubled presidency. And to do that, he has to address the problems of the economy, low growth, high unemployment, and to achieve progress there, much depends upon his credibility. There have been frequent protests about the economy. It was the turn of taxi drivers to block roads today. Among their complaints, higher taxes. And when we asked what they thought of the president, we got this response.
C'est le président de la République française.
Ouais.
The President's task tomorrow is to explain how he will revive the economy to a sceptical and frustrated public. It'll be a decisive moment for his presidency. Tonight he is preparing inside the Élysée Palace. The risk is that few will listen to him on the economy until he clarifies his personal life. Gavin Hewitt, BBC News, Paris.
Thank you, Mr. Hewitt. And friends, the scriptures I told you I'd mentioned that show you, one is from Genesis 35, verse 22, that says, "And it came to pass when Israel dwelt in that land that Reuben, the father of the modern French people today, went and lay with Bilhah, his father's concubine, and Israel heard it." So it wasn't done it wasn't just like this current situation with the president being reported by Closer magazine, and now the whole world essentially has heard it. Israel, back in the time of its father Reuben's trespass, was known by all of Israel. Israel heard it, and the rest of that verse says, if you look at it at the bottom, says, "Now the sons of Jacob were 12," and this is just enumerating how Jacob had 12 sons who became the 12 tribes of Jacob, whose name was changed to Israel. So the 12 tribes of Israel, one of whom was brother Reuben, the modern-day France. Now another scripture that tells how Reuben lost the birthright, he being the firstborn, the actual firstborn son of Jacob, firstborn son of Israel, but he lost the right to that firstborn's birthright because, as this verse tells us in First Chronicles 5 and verse 1, "Now the sons of Reuben, the firstborn of Israel, for he was the firstborn," Reuben, the father of the French-speaking people, "but forasmuch as he defiled his father's bed, his birthright was given unto the sons of Joseph, the son of Israel, and the genealogy is not to be reckoned after the birthright." So the birthright that would have gone to Reuben, the modern-day France, was passed, as it says here in verse 1 of 1 Chronicles 5, to Joseph. And Joseph had two sons who carry his name. Ephraim, the United Kingdom, at one time Great Britain, and a vast empire, the Commonwealth, the British Commonwealth, and the other son, Manasseh, now the United States. So those two sons of Joseph, Ephraim, the UK, and mostly the UK, and Manasseh, the United States, the sons of Joseph received the birthright that Reuben, the firstborn, would have had he not defiled his father's bed. And here he is in the news again today, committing those same immoralities. Look, he's not denying it. Let's put it that way. The French president is not denying the allegations of immorality. He's simply saying he's got a right to privacy, and he's going to sue you for publishing it. For publishing what he did. Well, as he brings the country down to its knees, perhaps in the process. Because nobody, as the report said, nobody's going to listen to him unless he addresses what he's doing with his relationships. One interesting thing about his relationship with the present First Lady, to whom he's not married. She doesn't carry his last name, and not only that, but in the report we showed you last night, the video last night, friends, the report brought out that they're not married. And so if like one of the people said, if he wants to have 2 or 3 wives, or, not even really married to them, if he decides he wants to change the First Lady, no wonder Miss Valerie Trierweiler is sick and going into the hospital, because she realizes if this president decides to just dump her, he doesn't even have to divorce her. He can put a new First Lady in at the snap of his fingers. He could bring in this French actress, Julie Gaillet, and put her in the place of Valerie at the flick of a finger. So, friends, that's it. You know, some of you ladies who are saying, I don't need marriage, I just shack up with this guy. One of the wonderful advantages, as God designed it to a vow in marriage, is commitment on both parts, yours and your husband's. It's a wonderfully designed thing, and to want to give that up and just treat affairs in life lightly. You know, if the person you shack up with leaves you emotionally, it's the same thing as divorce, except you don't have the, you know, there's actually an honor in divorce to a certain degree, because if somebody divorces you, let's say, all of your friends will rally with you over this person leaving you, male or whichever partner it is. Your friends will rally with you when the other one's done you wrong and leaves you and divorces you, because you had an honorable situation. But if you're simply shacked up, well, hey, you know, just go get another one. Nobody really understands the emotion you're going through. Same emotion as if it were a divorce, but with no honor. You know, that must be strange words to some of you, but that is the way it works. All right, let's go on. I think we're going to go just a little bit over time. I want to give you this story regarding what's happening in Iran. An interim agreement to freeze Iran's nuclear program will enter into force on January 20. Today's the 13th. That's 1 week from today. It's been announced. The deal agreed in talks with world powers in November, envisions easing of some international sanctions on Tehran. And you know, friends, if you saw the video on November 24, that's still in our archive. You can go back to November 24 and see the several reports we played after this announcement. The foreign minister of Iran saying this is just the first step. And if you listen carefully to all his words, he never said we've really made a deal to do this or that. He said this is just the first steps, and we are thankful that the world is recognizing Iran's rights to nuclear power. Excuse me? I think you should be acknowledging that you just made a deal to curtail those. But a few days later, and we showed you this video, and if some of you remember seeing that or remember the date of it, I'd appreciate it if you email me. I'd like to pull that up. You could help me if you already know the date that we showed the video of the former advisor to the president of Iran appearing on Syrian television. Now, he spoke in the Arab language, but there were English subtitles on the bottom giving you exactly in detail every word he said about how they tricked the United States and how they had some of the greatest diplomats handling the words and verbiage and all for them through all of this, and that he was laughing and saying, you know, and repeating essentially what the former Secretary of State of the United States, Mr. William Schultz, said shortly after that on television when we played that news report of what Mr. Schultz said, saying that in his experience, the Iranian people will smile at you, encourage you on your way, and cut your throat. And basically this former advisor to the Iranian president acknowledged just what Mr. Schultz said. He said, it's a mistake to negotiate with us. We'll tell you anything, but we'll really only do what we want to do, regardless of what we say. And he also explained how they have, right there on Syrian television, of course, in the Arabian language, and perhaps he thought none of us would ever see it, and certainly the liberal press has not picked up on this, but friends, we caught that. We grabbed that recording, and in spite of not having a license to play it, I took the risk that because it's news, we could get away with playing it, and so far we did. I got even past the 30-day content ID problem you can potentially have on YouTube with that video. So they weren't, they didn't file anything with anybody on it. They thought nobody would see it, I guess, but we saw it, we got it, and showed you how they said they tricked the United States, and they explained how what they did in secret was produce a lot of unreported enriched uranium that they have hidden underground so that they could then do this part of this deal to make them look good. They would reduce the enrichment on what's known and not hurt their plans to make a bomb at all, because they've got vastly increased stuff hidden underground. That's in our video archive, friends. And do you hear that in all this? No. The president tells you, like Neville Chamberlain coming back after his visit to Germany and with Hitler, when he comes back, says, "Wait, we got a peace deal with Hitler. Nothing to worry about, England." And then only weeks later, the bombs are falling on London and Ramsgate. And we showed you video the other night of how Ramsgate spent 9 months digging tunnels. And all of their town moved underground. And even when Churchill came to visit it, the bombings happened while he was visiting, and he had to rush underground into that shelter 60 feet below ground to protect himself, because there came the Germans dropping bombs even as Churchill was inspecting Ramsgate. And peace with Hitler, Neville Chamberlain came back saying. And here we have a modern United States president saying, "Oh, peace, we got this negotiated deal worked out with Iran, who we can trust, They're telling us they're going to do this and that." Mr. President, listen to the former Secretary of State, Mr. William Schultz, who told you they'll tell you anything. They'll smile at you, encourage you, send you on your way, and cut your throat. And they've admitted they've got this enriched uranium hidden underground in secret places, right there on Syrian television, just days after the November 24 deal. Friends, I'm sorry. I apologize for going overtime tonight, but I think you needed to know this. You need to know that things are ripe, especially those of you who God is called to a spring harvest. You need to be aware. There are things that could make this mousetrap Mr. Herbert Armstrong told us about snap overnight. And the fact that the euro is pulling itself together and doing so without the massive debt. They have strict rules to prevent a certain percentage of national debt from happening like we have here in the United States that could just plummet us overnight into a financial havoc and ruin. But let's see Beth McLeod's report. Thank you for being patient and waiting, Beth, on the deal agreed to in talks with world powers in November. Let's see what she has in this report from today's news.
The US Secretary of State has a spring in his step. The last sticking points with Iran have been ironed out, and the landmark deal is ready to be implemented.
Iran's nuclear program will not be able to advance. In fact, parts of it will be rolled back.
I'm going to play the rest of what he has to say, friends, and you heard me say that on that report on television, the former advisor to the Iranian president said they have secretly hidden enriched uranium underground. And I'm simply interrupting you, Mr. Kerry, to repeat that for people to hear, because you too are like President Obama and like former Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain. Peace. You can't negotiate with people that'll cut your throat when you turn your back. All right, friends, I apologize for interrupting the Secretary of State, but we're being like Neville Chamberlain. He came telling England, peace, don't worry, I got this peace deal worked out with Hitler. Then, oh, Mr. Kerry.
While we start negotiating a comprehensive agreement to address the international community's concerns about Iran's nuclear program.
To make certain that it is a peaceful programme, the gates to Iran's nuclear sites will be open to inspectors from the International Atomic Energy Agency more often. They'll have daily access to some sites and will be allowed into the controversial Arak heavy water reactor every month. The Iranian authorities have been quick to emphasise what they get in return for freezing their national nuclear programme, namely some relief from international sanctions.
Of course they're quick to point that part out. That's their whole game plan. That's the only reason why they're going along with this at all. And it's a duping, it's a deception. They are la-di-da, give us that money, give us that sanction money you've been holding, we'll pretend that we're going along with you. But man, we've got the stuff hidden underground that's super powered already you guys don't even know about. And yeah, we'll let you cut back 20% of the stuff you do know about because we already got this other stuff over here. And bomb for bomb, as soon as they reveal they got a bomb, then they're going to really stick their fist in your face and say, ha ha.
They have promised to release $4.2 billion of Iran's oil income to us. Whilst on our side, we have agreed to dilute our stockpile of 20% enriched uranium.
Friends, catch that. They've agreed to dilute 20% of their stockpile, of their known stockpile. But their former advisor to the president says they've already got secret stockpile that's enriched more than the stuff you know about, way beyond what this present stuff is. So they reduced this present stuff you know about by 20%. They still got stuff hidden underground that's already past that, more advanced than that stuff anyway. Their former advisor to the president of Iran said that on Syrian television, and we showed you that here a few weeks ago. So they're not saying they're going to do away with the ability to make a bomb. They're not even saying it. How duped can the United States government, and which is the catalyst behind the European people, all going along with this, like Neville Chamberlain coming back from Hitler saying we got a peace deal worked out. Oh no, you don't. Listen to the rest of it. He's not going to say he's not going to admit publicly here what they're doing behind the scenes. They've got diplomats speaking to you now in English that are just for deception.
In all, this will take place over a 6-month time period.
Iran's economy has come to a standstill in recent years, crippled by sanctions. The deal will partially lift them, stopping, for example, any further reductions in the amount of crude oil Iran is allowed to export.
President Obama is at pains to stress that this deal doesn't let Iran off the hook. Sanctions relief will be modest, he says, and inspections will be vigilant. This is to reassure allies like Israel, but also members of the US Senate. They're considering whether to impose new sanctions on Iran, a move that President Obama says could derail this delicate agreement. Beth McLeod, BBC News, Washington.
Yeah, and a bomb produced by Iran could blow the whole deal apart too. President Obama, you need to listen to a lesson from history and analyze and look at what happened with Neville Chamberlain when he went and made a deal, so he thought, with Hitler for peace. Peace, peace. Go the bombs over London and Ramsgate, over England. Friends, that's all the time we're going to take for tonight. I went 15 minutes over time tonight, but I think we had some important things for you. Some people have been encouraging me to go for a full hour, but I need to hear from some of you that you'd want to, stomach through a whole hour of news. When I can, I cut it short. I cut it down for you, and we try for the most part to keep it within a half hour. So, and that's going to be my goal unless I hear from a lot of you. Go ahead, Steve, go over. But I may be doing the reports from Washington, D.C. at some time in the future. I'm going up there to talk about working for, and not giving up this program, but doing some certain work out of D.C. that I'm in negotiations on right now, which I'd appreciate your prayers about, friends. And those of you that are close friends of mine, ask me, I'll tell you about it. But that's all we're going to take time for tonight. Thank you for joining me, friends, on this Monday night report. God willing, and the creek don't rise, we'll be back again here on Nightcast with a report tomorrow night, Tuesday night, of the world's day's news, current world news related to the Bible and prophecy here on Nightcast. Until next time, this is your host, Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth, saying,
You have been watching Nightcast with Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth. Nightcast can be seen Sunday through Thursday nights here on cogtv.org. Tonight's program is also available anytime on demand in the cogtv.org video archive.